hi to everybody. Thanks for joining me. I'm actually not Stephanie, I'm Sarah. And those of you who were here with me last month for our public checklist webinar know that I'm not super comfortable with checklists. It's something that I'm still learning, so Stephanie really encouraged me to do these webinars as a way of learning from me, and also you can learn alongside me while we dive into these topics. So last month was public checklists. This month is multi-record checklist. And next month, we're going to talk a little bit about checklist automation. So our goal is that by the end of this quarter, we'll have lots of great videos and guides to help you guys make the most of checklists. So that's just a little intro, and let's get started. If I can get this thing going. There we go. Oops. Nope, jumping all over the place. So today we're going to talk a little bit about understanding the processes you would make a checklist for. And then I'm going to walk you through creating a new checklist configuration based off of a new multi-record table. And while we do that, we're also going to address some considerations that you should keep in mind, things that are a little bit different when you make multi-record checklists. So before you dive into creating a checklist off of a multi-record table, you should understand what multi-record tables are. And we have a video which I can send out later, but really, I like to think of multi-record tables like an accordion file. It's a place to store records for things you do over and over again, like a bunch of background checks or a bunch of people in the home. Those are all called multi-record tables because there's multiple records for them. You should also have a multi-record table in your SAM site that you want to use for your checklist. So today I'm going to be working off a pretty new multi-record table, but you could certainly use existing multi-record tables for checklists, such as the adoption table. And most importantly, you should have a solid understanding of the process that you're working on, and also an understanding of how the checklist is going to become a part of that process. So we call this the how and the why here at SAM, but it really is just understanding how are we going to use this checklist and why are we using the checklist. A lot of times when I look at agency sites, I see checklists more as they're like creating more work for your team, where they really should be creating less work. And a lot of times that's just due to a disconnect between program leaders or the person who's configuring the checklist. They don't know that the workers are already collecting data in a different way. So we really encourage you to have a solid understanding of the process before you dive too much into it. And this is an image that I shared last month, but we do this all the time at Inreach Solutions. We get sticky notes out, and our sticky notes represent different responsibilities or tasks. And then we kind of move the sticky notes around in different configurations to understand what the picture is, like what is actually going on. So this configuration is called a swim lane. It shows the responsible groups or people. Then we put the tasks over there, and we try to make sense of what's the flow of responsibility. So when we work with clients, we try to do this before we dive in and configure their SAM system, just because every process is different. Your guys' home study process is probably different than another agency's. But doing this work before creating a checklist is going to be so valuable because you will already know the way you're going to make the most of this tool. So that's just our little preaching moment about workflow. Moving on. Okay, so ideally, multi-record checklists should turn data collection into action items. Really, any checklist would be doing that. You're collecting a lot of information in your SAM system, but checklists turn that into the so what. Like, okay, the family tells me this bit of information, so what does that mean for my team? What's the next step? Just like we saw on the previous slide, you're going to have to answer a lot of questions internally about your workflow and your processes when you create a checklist. So it's going to help create a standard process for your team. Certainly, you don't get it right the first time. We don't. We are always improving our own internal processes. In fact, today I was just thinking I should make a multi-record checklist based off of webinars because I'm always forgetting to start the recording or email stuff out. So it's always improving. And then the reason to use multi-record checklists instead of just a multi-record form is you hope you can help simplify these complex parts of your program into little to-do items that are assigned to different people. So with that being said, let's go over to my fake SAM site here. And right here, we're looking at a form. I guess I can start from a family, a fake family. So let's say that in my agency, I created a new multi-record table to collect information about pets. So maybe my team is already entering really basic information about pets here. This could be replaced, instead of pets, this could be education credits. It could be people in homes. I just use pets because I'm here with my dog and that was sort of on the brain. So my team maybe is collecting really basic information about animals already, but now I'm thinking, you know, pets are part of the home study. It seems like people are duplicating work. Why don't I just create a checklist that's going to help my team collect this information in a way that is a little bit more manageable, and also we can get the families involved and put some of this stuff on the public checklist so they can help us out when it comes to doing this work. So this is already a multi-record table, but what I need to do first is make sure that I can use this table on a checklist. So you'll want to go to Settings and find the table that you want to create your checklist off of. I'm going down to my pets table, which I just made, and you click on Advanced Options, really advanced options, and you need to go to the table properties, and here you'll see can be used on checklists. This needs to be set to yes. By default, multi-record tables are set to no. Obviously, I was kind of playing around with this table and I set it to yes, but you would just click on it and make sure this box is checked. And once you've done that, you'll be able to see this in your checklist configuration. And I'm recording this webinar, so don't worry about remembering all those steps. You can certainly watch the video or read our guides, or you can always just ask us if you forget about doing this, because you might not see your table in the checklist configuration. All right, now that I made sure I can see it on the checklist, let's go back to our settings page. And here's the checklist configuration page. So hopefully you are all somewhat familiar with creating checklists. So I won't go into too much of the basics, but let's go ahead and create a new checklist section for my pets. So I have a couple of sections that exist already. Oh no, I already have my pet check. Let's pretend that doesn't exist. Okay, we're creating a brand new section, wink, wink. So I'm going to click this add item here, and I'm going to create a custom section name, and we'll call this pets, or whatever you want to name it. And then Sam's going to ask you, do you have a field already, or do you want to create a new field? And Stephanie is really into creating all your fields from the checklist, because when you do this, it's sort of like killing two birds with one stone. You could create a document and a date field at the same time. And it really took me a long time to understand what she was saying. But now that I've been playing around with multi-record checklists, I really believe her, because it's a lot easier. So let's say that I want to create a new field here. We're going to click on this little button here, create a new field, make sure we're under the pets table. And let's call this vaccination records, because I know from doing that sticky note work that I need to collect some vaccination records for every pet in the home. You can set a response time, you don't have to, but let's say it's 30 days, business days, from the date that the pet is entered. So I clicked my pet table, pet entered date. It could also, most likely, it would actually be set by the home study date if pets are part of your home study. And then you can set your responsible employee. We'll just say that this is going to be the home study worker. They're in charge of doing this when they're visiting the home or working with the family. And then it's asking you, does the document already exist? We don't already have a document, so I'm going to create a document. Sam auto-fills this for me, vaccination records document upload. Cool, sounds good. And then it's asking what type of document this is. You can just click this create new document type, and it will automatically create a document type for my document list called vaccination records. So this is doing a lot of work for you, whereas if you were doing this from the tables and fields page, you would have to create the document type list, you'd have to create the document upload. This is just streamlining that process. Now, for those of you who were at last month's webinar, you'll remember this. This is the shown for clients. So when you are working on the family checklist, you can have the option to show this for clients. And what that is going to do, which I'll show you at the end, is allow your family to interact with this task. So you can actually email the family and say, hey, go to your checklist and upload your pet's vaccination records. In fact, let's go ahead and put this. Please upload the latest vaccination records. There we go, great. Then it's going to ask for criteria. So I'm not going to do any criteria on this one, but I will do another one where we will do criteria. And we'll go ahead and save. So once you've created your first checklist item for a multi-record table, you need to then go back and check in with the section settings. So what you do is you find the section title right here, and there's a little gear icon here. And multi-record tables have some extra settings that you need to do. The first thing you need to do, you should make sure that it's automatically entered. You could do this with an auto action, but it's easy enough just to do it right here. Because the interesting thing about multi-record tables when they're used on checklists is that they should be added when the multi-record is added. Otherwise, Sam can get confused, and later you can't really go back and say, oh, add this checklist section for this person and home record that already exists. Sam just has a little bit of trouble understanding what you're talking about. So what we want to do is make sure it's automatically entered. So we'll do that one. The pet name, it could be anything. I tended to pick the name field because I know that that should be entered. And then here it's going to say, okay, for every time I add this checklist section, how do you want me to distinguish the different checklist sections? So I chose the pet name here. That means we're going to see the section as pet check, followed by the pet name, and it will be very clear who these documents are for. I don't know why you would use another. Maybe if you're doing dogs versus cat, you could choose pet type, but I think that makes sense. I'm not going to do any criteria here. It's just going to automatically be entered when a pet record is entered. And I'll save. And let's go ahead and add another checklist item here. So let's see, we're going back to our pets section, which exists now. And I think I have a field on my table already. Yeah, here's behavioral concerns. So I'm thinking if a home study worker goes to the home and they meet this dog or cat and they're a little bit worried, the dog seems a little aggressive, maybe they would mark that they have some behavioral concerns, and that's going to result in a follow-up. Maybe they have to get some more information from the family or do another home visit and then provide a little bit more information on the checklist. So let's say 30 days from the pet being entered again, works for me. We'll set it to the home study worker or the caseworker. It could be whatever you want, but in this case, home study worker makes sense to me. And then let's create a document, a behavioral concerns addendum. And we'll create that document type. It won't be shown for clients because this would be an internal thing, but let's do a little bit of criteria because not all pets will have behavioral concerns. So I'm going to go to my pet table, and I already had a field called behavioral concerns on that very simple form I showed you at the beginning. So we'll say that when the behavioral concerns field is marked as yes, that will make this checklist section or this checklist item appear. So we've got some pretty basic stuff here. Let's take a look at in action and see how it looks to us on the checklist. So this is my test family. They already have a couple items on their checklist just because I test on this, but they don't have any pets, so nothing's here about pets. So let's go ahead and add a pet here. This is my multi-record form for pets. Let's add Milo. He's a cat. We don't have any behavioral concerns. We could add a photo. I'll just go ahead and skip that. And let's add Otis. He's a dog. And we do have some concerns. When we went to the home visit, he was growling at us. We'll hit save. We'll go back to the family and take a look at their checklist. So now you can see the multi-record checklist in action. Here's the name of our section, and it's taking the name of the pet and putting it there and saying, cool, all you need from Milo are his vaccination records. But Otis, we had some behavioral concerns. So he has an extra checklist item that is this behavioral concerns addendum that we would upload here. Now we can take a look and see how, actually, let's do one little thing. Just to revisit our public checklist webinar that we did, let's add a little cherry on top for our clients and put a little more decoration on this. So we'll go back to checklist configuration, family checklist. We'll go down to my pet section. And down here, we can click this little tiny enter client checklist settings, and that brings up some options for the public checklist. And this is a really cool thing I like to use, which is the section template. I don't know if you heard that. It was my dog barking, so I have some behavioral concerns about that dog. So I created a really simple template under the family that's now available to use. So now when we look at the checklist, we'll see that. Let's see. So I can log in as my test family. We can show you what the checklist would look like to them for their pets. Here's the family case checklist. Let's see. So you would email the link to your public forms to your families. They would come here to log in. They could set a password if they don't have one, but once they give their information, hey, that works. Nope. I need to reset my password. There we go. This is what the client would see. They see all of the checklist items that are currently set as shown for clients. So look down here, we've got our checklist section template. That's what this little thing is. It's coming up on top of the items. And it's just giving a little bit more information about why my organization is collecting this information. People might be worried that having a pet would eliminate them from foster care or adoption. So you could just say, hey, this is why we need it. You'll see that they do not see that behavioral addendum for Otis because it's not marked as clients being seen, but they can provide the vaccination records right from the public checklist. Just go ahead and put a test one in there. And they can provide that information for Milo as well. And just make it a little easier for your staff. So you could also have like the pet photo or any other information you want to collect from the family here. Then when we go back to our test family from the internal view, we'll see that these items have been completed. Hooray, that's great. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about? I went through that a little bit too fast. Just as a note, you can click the chat button up at the top if you do have questions. Certainly, I might not be able to answer all of them, but I'll be meeting with Stephanie after this, so now's a good time to throw out any questions you have. Geez, I really just breezed through that. Just looking at my notes here. Oh yeah, I did want to talk about how documents work on checklists. So we have this behavioral concerns addendum that you could upload to the checklist. But what if you're worried that someone's going to try to upload it through that form, the pet form? Or maybe you want to make it so that you could do it both ways, like they could enter information from the form or they could enter it from the checklist. What you would want to do for that when we're looking at this form is we could add in that newly created document upload form that was created on the checklist. So you would go into Form Customizer and you can add that field. Let's see, is it behavioral concerns addendum? That's it. We could add our vaccination records if we wanted to. The document upload field. And as long as it's using that same document field, it will work both ways. So let's add a new pet for our test family here. It could be horse. We don't have any behavioral concerns, but let's upload his vaccination records here. And in a perfect world, he'll have a new, here's Chippy, and you can see he has, oh, did I say he had behavioral concerns? Oops, well, you can see that that document I uploaded on the form is actually here on the checklist already. So that item is already marked as completed. So that's another reason why it's a great idea to create your fields from the checklist, because you're sort of thinking about your workflow. And from your workflow, you could then go and place those items on your forms. Yeah, so I guess next time we're talking about checklist automation, which is really, when we do that, most of the times for clients, we're talking about home study automation. So maybe I could talk a little bit about that, but we'll certainly be revisiting that next month. When you go to create your multi-record checklist, you should think about what triggers that section to appear and what is required. So for pets, it's pretty straightforward because we're always collecting the same information. But for a home study checklist or a home study renewal, you might want to have different checklist sections depending on if it's the first time or it's the renewal. And I don't want to get too far into it just because we'll be discussing that next month. Let's see if I have an example here for our review. No, that's not it. All right, well, I'm not going to actually dive too deep into it just because I don't want to spoil next month. But if anybody has questions about multi-record setup, you could certainly ask that in the chat room. And I know a couple people were asking for last month's webinar to have a recording of that, and I totally forgot to record it. But I do have a public checklist template video that I'll be emailing out after this call. So you should have a really good starting place for starting to configure public checklists and multi-record checklists. But if nobody has any questions, I think we're actually good to end early today. Our next webinar is next month. So it's the 21st. It's always on a Wednesday. It's going to be all about automation. So we're going to talk a little bit about record groups, about scheduling out these repeated processes on a multi-record template, and also just automating reminders and tasks for getting your stuff done. And that's going to be the 21st, and you can RSVP at inreachsolutions.com/events, and we will see you then. So thank you to everybody. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.